Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Tech Bros podcast. Here we are again. It is me, Raj, and over there is Egerton. Hello.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm good. You?
Yeah, pretty good. Pretty
Good.
So I know that in the last episode we had a bit of a downer because we were discussing like internet shutdowns and how they're kind of scary, right?
Yes.
Well, guess what? The downer continues.
Oh dear.
We promised that we'll try and find some more light-hearted topics at some point that we'll talk about. But for now, you're just gonna have to bear with on our little negative Nancy routine here because we're talking about facial recognition today.
Woohoo!
So we'll give a sort of a brief primer on how it works, how it's being used today, and as I'm probably sure you can already guess, why it's maybe not good and why it's kind of scary as well. So basically, facial recognition, we're talking specifically about applications that allow you to feed in a photo of someone, and then basically the application returns who that person is. That can be used for a sort of a few different purposes. And I think you can sort of give an intro on that then.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
What main purposes are.
Yes. So the first one is, well, it's within the field that I currently work in, which is travel. And it's mainly used at, well, I'll say UK and Europe, which is at border control. So if you have traveled to Europe or the UK before, you'll notice that you have to pass through border control. And these border control consist of you using your biometric passport, which goes into a reader, and this system basically reads your face to make sure that you are the person that is on the passport. And if you're not, you ain't going anywhere.
And do they say anything about whether they store that information afterwards? So even after that person has, say, already gone through the border, do they still keep that sort of camera information?
Well, unfortunately, we don't get told that information because that's top secret. So
right.
we will never know if that is stored or not.
There's probably a reason you don't know the answer, though. Unfortunately.
But yeah, so you use that for border control. And also in terms of taking flights within the UK, domestic flights, as a lot of people would know, if you take a domestic flight to places like Ireland and Scotland, or Wales, where you don't need a passport to travel there. However, you do something called biometrics, which is before you leave the country or before you actually leave. Let me rephrase that. When you have finished your check-in and you're going to the other side, that's what we call it, the other side, the air side, your pictures will be taken. That picture will be matched against you when you get to the boarding gate to make sure that you are who you are and that you're not taking the place of somebody else on the flight.
Right.
Yes. So I haven't done biometrics for a very long time, but it's commonly used at all the major airports in the UK. And basically, you just stand on the yellow circle, you look at a camera, and the camera will match you against everybody that's actually been booked on that flight. And when a positive match is made, you board the aircraft.
Yeah, I think I've seen that in a few other places as well. I think I've seen that in Canada when I traveled there as well.
Yeah, so it's very commonly used for internal flights.
Yeah,
as well. Or actually, fair enough. Funny enough, also in the United States, because I tend to go to New York every year. And on my last trip to New York, when you land, your picture is taken by border security. However, when you're leaving the country and you're at the boarding gate, they don't ask for your passport. They tell you to just step on the marker, look at the camera, and the gate will open. And I was thinking that, my picture wasn't taken any time during check-in. So where do they collect my picture from? So they use the same image that you used to come into the country to verify if you're the one leaving the country.
Okay, so they basically just wait, but they don't take your picture again when you leave.
No, they don't take your picture when you leave, but when you arrive, they take your picture.
Yeah.
When you arrive into the States, they take your picture.
And you know that they're taking your picture.
Yes, they tell you that because they take your picture and they take your fingerprints.
Okay, right.
Yes. And then they use that image against your passport information because again, border security will take your passport. So that image is stored against your passport number in the system. So when your passport is then matched when you're leaving the country against one of those people that are leaving the country, then they use that image to make sure that you're the one that's leaving the country.
But then what are they comparing what you're looking like now when you're leaving the country? Because they're not taking your picture again when you leave, right?
No, they're not taking a picture, but it's the facial recognition, isn't it?
Oh, okay. But then where's that camera?
Because that's that will be your stored image for when you arrived in the States before.
Right. Okay. It's a bit weird.
Yeah. So, all right. Let me see if I can explain it better. So, let's say day one, I arrived in the States from the UK. So, when you arrive, you have to see immigration. Immigration takes your fingerprints and your picture.
Yeah.
So then you go a week later, you're leaving the USA, you arrive at the airport, they take your passport, they swipe your passport, so all your passport information is in there. So what will happen is they'll match that passport number against your image that was taken the week before.
Okay.
So then when you issue your boarding pass, it will come with your name, whatever. When you're at the boarding gate, you just look at the camera because they know they're on that flight. You just look at the camera and they will compare the image that they took the previous week against the image now. I'll be like, this is the same person. They're leaving. That's it. Out.
Okay. Yeah, I got you. But then do they match so when you arrive in the US, do they match the picture they take with the passport at that point?
Well, I would assume so. If they're taking your picture and they're also taking a copy of your passport number, then I would say yes as a file, because of course they need to make a log of that because of your ESTA.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right.
So yes, I will say at the same time that they're taking your passport details for the system, it's basically taking an image as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah,
I got you.
It can be very confusing.
Yeah.
It can be very confusing. But moving on from aviation, also another use of facial recognition is your mobile phone. And for those that have a smartphone, such as an iPhone or a Samsung phone or another well-known smartphone, that now they come in with facial recognition.
Yeah.
Or
So I can
fingerprint recognition.
so I can sort of speak a little bit to how this. So obviously, companies don't really disclose how facial recognition works. But how it probably works is that they use something that's called a triplet loss function. So what they do is that they basically have pictures in sets of threes. So let's say we take a picture of you, Egerton, and then we take another picture of you. Maybe you're making a different face or something like that, because obviously you need to be able to. You can't just obviously make the same face every single time that you go to Face ID on your phone. The phone needs to know that it's still you, even after you maybe are making a different face. Maybe I don't know, you're cold and maybe your face is gone red a little bit, but it still needs to know that it's you, right? So when it first is kind of setting you up, it has these two photos of you, and then it has a third photo, which is basically something else, like someone else, basically. And what it wants to, and what essentially this kind of neural network does is it essentially trains on these kind of sets of three, such that the two photos of you are kind of made as similar as possible, and then those two photos compared to this third photo of someone else is as different as possible. And what this then means is that each photo is kind of broken up into a set of numbers, essentially. This could be a set of like 128 numbers or a set of 256 numbers. So you can imagine that maybe if you're trying to position images on like a graph of how similar they are, so that images that are more similar to one another are closer to one another on that graph. You can now sort of imagine that this graph, rather than being like an X and a Y, is like in 128 or 256 dimensions, which obviously most of us can't really comprehend, which makes sense. But basically each photo is kind of broken up into this set of numbers. Now, it's not like some people might say, well, what exactly is the algorithm doing? Is it maybe weighting more on your eyes, for example? Maybe it's looking at like the area around your nose, hair, maybe. And the thing is, Apple, when they're training this sort of neural network, obviously they trained it before actually launching the sort of Face ID system. And basically what they did is they did like a bunch of strange stuff, such as people taking photos in weird locations, maybe with like different haircuts, and stuff like that. Because obviously, like, say if you've shaved your head, you still want your Face ID to work. You don't want it to say like, oh no, this is someone else, because you've shaved your head, right? So they basically tried to train it in such a way that it says, okay, ignore stuff like hair and maybe look more at eyes and things that are more sort of permanent, things that won't change as much. But what's sort of, I guess, important is that set of numbers that each image is kind of represented by, no one can really look at that and sort of gauge anything from it. We don't really know how it works, is the thing. Like, we don't know what those numbers mean, and we don't really know what sort of features that it's gathering from the face. It's probably to do with sort of the contours of the face or something like that. But the point is, we don't really know, which I guess in a sense makes it a little bit better, because it's not like it's storing your actual photo. It's only storing these numbers. So if someone were to get access to it, they wouldn't really be able to do much with it. So
exactly.
Bit of a long-winded explanation, but basically it's a little bit more, it's a slightly better way of doing things, because we don't really care whether this person that the camera is looking at is Egerton. We only really care that it's like, is this the same person that I saw before? And that's really all it's sort of interested in. So in that sense, we still don't really know how it works. And to be honest, I don't think the Apple engineers really know how it works, or whoever, which is maybe a good or a bad thing, depending on how you look at it. But yeah, that's basically how it works.
Oh, that is very interesting. Very interesting. I'm just having a look at one other thing. There we go. And so I'm just reading down my notes to make sure, have I covered that already? Oh no, I haven't.
I may have stolen your thunder a little bit.
Security. security, isn't it?
So do you mean law enforcement?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
So
this is obviously the other kind of purpose that facial recognition is used for, and maybe the purpose that is the most kind of touted as to why it's useful, of why it's kind of needed, is for law enforcement.
mhm. Yes. So if you've noticed, there has been a lot of cameras as of recent being put up, and you'd think that they're normal street cameras. They are actually cameras for facial recognition.
Yeah. So even here in the UK, the Metropolitan Police has started using facial recognition cameras in the last year.
Mhm.
They started switching them on. The way that they essentially look at it is they basically say that these cameras are on all the time, and that it just looks at faces. And if it's a face that is kind of on their list, let's say, obviously they have a list of people who are perhaps, is on their
Wanted.
radar. Yeah, someone who's probably on the watch list or something like that.
Yeah.
Then it'll match those two, and it'll send a ping to sort of officers to say this person's been spotted here. But then they say that if it doesn't match anyone on the list, then they delete it straight away. At least that's the hope. Now, we don't know that, but that's at least what they say.
Yes. Yes. So with brackets.
With brackets.
Brackets and
inverted commas, do you mean?
Inverted commas. Yeah, everything.
Yeah.
Even a kitchen sink. Kitchen sink. But yeah, we would actually hope so that they do delete it, but who knows?
Yeah. So really, there's sort of the issue that then. So obviously, a lot of people will say that it's for sort of law enforcement, and if it's for criminals and people who are suspicious, then it's maybe worth doing it. But the problem is that you have now companies that are using facial recognition, but not for law enforcement purposes. While it's being used by law enforcement, it's also being used by, it can be used by regular people. So there's an example of this this app in Russia, and basically this app allows you to take a picture of someone, and then what it does is that it basically tells you who that person is. So this is an app called Find Face. So if you're if you're in a public space, you can sneak a picture of someone and find out who they are. And this is even the same with like Google image search. You can put a picture of someone into Google image search, and it'll bring up images that are other images of that person basically that exist on the internet, and then you can sort of find out who they are. And it sort of brings up this interesting thing of, we are able to sort of move through the world, at least maybe in a pre-lockdown time, but we're able to move through the world and people not know who we are. But now that doesn't seem to be the case anymore, where we might be moving through the world and people might be able to know who we are all of a sudden.
Yeah. Exactly. I don't know how I feel about that.
I mean, it is scary, isn't it?
Yeah, I really, because I just don't know. Like, I'm just thinking that it's improper purposes for using that. I just think that's an improper purpose. I'm sorry.
Like, you can't really say that it's going to just be used for, criminals and suspicious individuals, when it can very easily be used for everyone else as well.
Yes.
There's even this example of a company in China called Clearview AI, and they basically have assembled one of the biggest sort of data sets of images. So they have about 3 billion images that they scraped from the internet. And this is stuff that, I mean, I don't want to say like it's our fault, but these are images that we've basically created ourselves. These images that we posted on Facebook and Instagram, and we've tagged people in to say, this is this person. So we've already given them like a bunch of training data.
You see, I don't tag anybody. Well, actually,
Oh no.
I would say Facebook, I don't do that anymore. However, Instagram I do, but my Instagram is private. So in theory, they shouldn't get it through Instagram if it's private. But Facebook, is Facebook even private? That's the thing.
I feel like some profiles you could probably look up and actually see, tag photos of people.
Yeah.
Like, you could just take a photo of someone that you see and then just put it into an image search, and then it'll probably bring up like a Facebook post of them where they're tagged. And that's probably where these sort of facial recognition software is able to get these images from, is that they get it from stuff that is publicly available. They scrape from these social media websites. So, your information is kind of out there to then be used in this sort of way, unfortunately.
Yeah. Basically, don't tag people in your pictures.
Well, unfortunately, it's kind of too late, though. I mean, you could go...
Yeah, it's too late, but you know what? You could just start. This don't do it anymore. Don't do it anymore. Don't do it anymore. Do we have anything else on facial recognition?
I do have one other thing, which is that yes. So when it comes to, particularly when we start thinking about the sort of law enforcement side of facial recognition, one of the things that then starts to come up is how accurate are those identifications? So is it able to identify the right person in a particular photo to say that this is this person? And there's some research done in MIT by someone called Joy Buolamwini. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. But basically, she also spoke in at the US Senate about this. And basically, she conducted some research comparing the accuracy of facial recognition software across different demographics. And what she found is that men were more accurately identified than women, and those of a lighter skin were more accurately identified than those of darker skin. So in particular, those who are dark-skinned females were misidentified a lot more often. Is a problem.
I think there was something about this, and I can't pinpoint what it was. But this same sort of situation happened, and it was just misidentifying because of the color of the skin, and I think it brought up a whole big issue on why is it like that. I can't remember the story per se, but I know there was a big issue in relation to that, and I think it was something to do with telephone and mobile phone facial recognition.
Yeah. I mean, I think part of it is also just because if you're using the same sort of system, the same algorithm, and you're trying to apply it across all faces, obviously faces are things that are very different. They're very variable, and it depends on a lot of different things. Obviously, the complexion of skin being a big factor. And the problem is if you're using the same set of rules to distinguish faces across all demographics, then it's not going to work as well across all demographics. And so what you're going to have is that you're going to maybe like if you were to recognize faces, how you recognize a lighter skinned male is very different to how you recognize a darker skinned female. And the problem is if you have a lot of misrepresented and miscategorized people, then that can lead to a lot of problems. I mean, what if you get miscategorized as a criminal or something like that?
You don't want that.
You don't want that. So there's a lot of, problems that can arise from that. There's even a problem. There was a story of a student at Brown University in the US. I think maybe this might be the one that you saw.
No, I remember which one it is now. And it was this country.
Okay, but this student at Brown University, she was linked to a terrorist attack in Sri Lanka by facial recognition software, and she's in the US. And then she had a bunch of people trying to get to her at Brown University, trying to investigate whether she was linked, and obviously she wasn't. So, that's a
poor her.
I know, and that was during her finals week as well at university, which is just about the worst thing.
That's the worst thing ever.
Yeah. So what was the story that you saw?
So it was sort of mobile phone, but it wasn't. It was people should know now that you can renew your passport online.
Mm-hmm.
And when you renew your passport online, the application tells you to take a picture on your phone.
All right.
And the system will basically check to see if the photo is suitable. It's not kind of face recognition per se, but along the lines of that. And you could have a person with dark skin on a white background, and the system would say that they don't recognize you, or your picture is too dark.
Yeah.
And that brought up a big can of worms in terms of how systems are built to kind of fix this issue.
Yeah.
So, because I remember someone was saying, and it was a whole big thing on the news and on Twitter as well, where this lady who was dark-skinned was trying to renew her passport online, and she kept having these issues where she was not recognized because of the color of her skin.
Yeah. I mean, also just to illustrate, like this MIT research also showed that Oprah Winfrey was incorrectly categorized as well.
No.
One of the most famous people in the entire world. Couldn't even identify her.
Gosh.
So, definitely kind of gets you thinking about, because I think the problem is, even if it works perfectly and it manages to identify faces every time, the amount of data that it would need to get to that stage is massive. And even if we get to that stage, you probably have to go through this transition phase of it working badly, of it miscategorizing people.
Yeah.
And in order to sort of get through that, we're then going to have a lot of these kinds of stories along the way. And then even when it works properly, it's probably going to be really intrusive, and our data is just going to be stored by and accessed by other people.
Yeah.
Another chirpy note to end.
Come on. I just hope they kind of fix that. We live in a world now where we've got advanced technology. It can't be that hard.
I mean, do you think that it's something that is worth pursuing if it can be done well, or do you just think we shouldn't bother? We shouldn't touch it?
No, I think that they need to seek other avenues in terms of improving this. So I'd say they should carry on they should carry on looking into this. Yeah.
So you would be happy for law enforcement to use facial recognition?
To be honest, as long as they're using it for lawful practices. As if they're using it to keep us safe, yeah, absolutely. But if you're going to use it for improper uses, then no.
Yeah. But the problem is, as we've kind of seen, companies can still use the same methods, and it be available to everyone rather than just law enforcement. And if that's the case, then that's a problem, because then if anyone can use it on anyone, then we're all kind of, our faces are now no longer kind of safe, essentially.
Yeah.
So it's kind of difficult, I think, for it to be only used by law enforcement. Even if it were to be used, even if we kind of aimed for that, I don't think that's really likely, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And this is why actually in some places, like in San Francisco, they've actually banned the use of facial recognition completely. They basically just say, we're not going to use it. it still can be used on a sort of national, federal level, but it's not used on a sort of city-wide level. So we could just decide to not do it. But the problem is, if we do have a lot of publicly available images of ourselves on social media and stuff like that, then there's not really much to stop people from just taking all those images, gathering them, and then just applying the sort of algorithms to it, and then they can sort of create something. So that's the other problem, is that there's a lot of data out there already ready for use.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. Oh, well, we could just have to wait and see, really. Wait and see what 2021 brings us in terms of facial recognition. Oh dear. Did you have anything else on that, or?
No, I think that's it from me.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything else really on that.
Great. Well, that's another chirpy episode. Yay!
Woohoo!
Party time.
Oh dear. But yeah. Yeah. I always keep looking at my notes and I'm thinking that, do I miss something? No, I don't. But yeah, it was good to kind of dive into facial recognition. So yeah.
Well, thank you all very much for listening. Let us know your thoughts. Very interested to hear what people think about it. I mean, obviously, do you think that it can be used in a way that is sensible, that is lawful? Can it be used in strictly a kind of a way to keep us safe, or is it something that just almost is like the juice isn't worth the squeeze, and that if it means having sort of the threat of so much sort of surveillance, is it then sort of not worth pursuing at all? So let us know what you think about that. Thank you very much for listening. We will see you hopefully for the next episode. Bye.
Good night.
Thank you.